entertainment, insights. Don't take life too seriously. Welcome to Brainski Unleashed. Welcome to Brainski Unleashed. Today I'm really excited to have, I consider him a friend at this point, Luis Camejo. I did pronounce that correct? I got that right?
I'm actually surprised. That was
got
perfect.
that right? Isn't that fantastic? Okay,
we are friends. We are friends.
We're friends, but I managed to get the name right, which is amazing because that is not one of my talents when it comes to dialect. I've been on his show. He's been helping me with my podcast. Luis is actually part of the show. Content is Profits. Did I get that one right? Or Content Equals Profits or something?
Yeah, you got it too. Here we go.
Look at this.
Sneak
I'm
peek
just hitting it on
behind me.
all
Yeah.
cylinders tonight. Background's a little bit different. I'm actually in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm out on the road. I thought, you know what? I don't want to miss an opportunity to have a podcast. I want to make sure I produce some damn good content for anyone that wants to listen. And we're going to have a great interview because his show is way bigger than mine. And he's got just tons of listeners, produces an obscene amount of content. He helps me with my podcast and some people that I know with their podcasts. Great company, great guy. So let's just roll right into it. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. And so with that, Luis, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Yeah, what's up? Thank you for that amazing intro and those kind words. I've grown very fond of you guys and what you guys do and your show too, obviously, because now we handle it inside of the company. And I think what you do is incredible. And also managing that with your life. It's even better. So
are you saying that it's a little bit complicated?
I thought I did a lot of things, and then I met you and everything that you do. And every time we talk, you're somewhere different and you're just enjoying life. And you're always with a big smile on your face, man, which it's super exciting and motivating for me because I'm like, this is great. Like, good example to follow and a good person to be around. I'm stoked. Thank you for having me in your show.
Oh, you are quite welcome, and you feel free to feed that ego all you want. That's perfectly fine. Before we get into it, for those of you that don't know, because I'm sure I have listeners who don't necessarily know a lot about me. Yeah, no, I'm everywhere all the time doing all kinds of things. I've said it before, and I've said it on other podcasts and even my own podcast. I'm an entrepreneur, but I do a lot of different things. And my heart goes out to people like Luis and those who work with me because tracking me down to even just simply have a conversation sometimes is a multiple day process. So thank you for that. And thank you for your patience. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. So you run a podcast, and the podcast that you run is Content is Profits. Now, why would you call it that? Why don't we get into where do you come up with that name and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Today, a lot of the people know us because of the show, but we started it as a Hail Mary to save our company in 2020. And at the time we were in a mastermind, our first ever mastermind, we paid way too much money at the time. I actually got a personal loan to leave my job because my wife was like, hey, if you want to pursue this full time, at least have a year worth of cash in the account because she was going through grad school and we were pregnant. And I just had to go to 5 different banks and then I paid
because that's a perfect time to leave your job.
Absolutely. To pursue the dream, right?
With all of that going on in life, you want to take out a giant loan and leave your job. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, mind you, this was September 2019, and we had no idea that COVID was coming right around the corner too.
So actually COVID is then your fault because you rolled the dice like that and you're like, let's get a global pandemic.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened. So as soon as I got the money in the bank account, green light for COVID, and the rest is history. And then we found ourselves in this event and we decided to invest half of that money into one mastermind without telling my wife, me and my brother. And we're like, we really believe in this. And at the time as a company, we were really just freelancing. It was just me and my brother. We did so many things. We had 7 different things that we were offering at the time, and we decided on content. So why is because over the 3 years before that, we started producing content. We went to offices, we did event video, we did shots for corporations. We would literally take any gig recording wise or content wise in our town. So we truly believe that content leads to profits. There's many ways, but the belief was there. And when we're in the mastermind, people kept asking us, when are you guys starting a podcast? When are you guys starting a podcast? And we're like, we have no idea how to do this thing. At the time, we were doing a challenge internally, me and my brother, to unlock publishing. which we decided to go 45 days of Facebook Lives. And it was just to get in practice of publishing, of putting our message out there and sharing stories and thinking right off the bat. And it was really exciting and very successful, like the first time that we did, because we ended up connecting with who it was like our first client for the agency, the new agency that we had. But also we failed at day 17th because of that, right? We started to work on the client and forgot that we had to actually create content. So then COVID happened, and about 80% of our sales, legit, like within a week, completely gone. And we get one client that's online, and he had a podcast, and he was publishing 3 times a week. And he goes, guys, you need to start a podcast. And we're like, but why? Like, how? And he's, trust me, just go for it. And we're like, everybody tells us to do it. Let's go. Let's dive in. We have time now. We have 60 days of runway with cash in the bank account. This will save us. And so we basically manifested that content is actual profit. That was like the main idea. And then our mastermind or coach, he was like, it's actually a great name. And the domain was available, contentisprofit.com. So we're like, this is a sign.
Perfect.
So that's the story behind the start of the show and why we chose the name, and stuck to it. We're about to hit 500 episodes after a few years of publishing, and we're part of the Hotspot Podcast Network, and we've met an incredible network, and that's the true value of podcasting, I believe, which led to many opportunities. That was the start.
Do you know how many people follow your podcast, or have how many like unique listens do you generally get?
Yeah, I think we just surpassed 100,000 like overall downloads in audio, which is like super exciting. I remember when we first hit like 100 downloads, we were like, this is somebody's listening to us. What? And they're not in Jacksonville, Florida or Venezuela. It's not our dad or mom. And so like in listens is that YouTube it has been a little bit different. We'd never published on YouTube. So how the show started was Facebook Live, because that's what we were like known. So we decided to just actually put an iPhone as a camera. We had a little office at the time, and it was like this corner table, and it was an iPhone connected to a software called Ecamm Live and Skype. So we're actually sending Skype link to people because that was like the only software that was available with the software that we're using. And everybody's like, Skype? You guys still use Skype? And we're like, yeah. So talk about adding friction. So we will actually stream it live, and we have a machine here that we can load different sounds and things. And we started loading our songs, and we would do the intro live because we didn't want to edit. That was the secret. We were like, whatever goes out, and that's it. Because a year before that, we actually started a podcast called Brews and Bros as a test, and it was documenting something that we were learning at the time. And just the setup alone took us about 2 hours. Then we had 2 cameras. We're trying to make it all fancy in Fonzie's room. It literally looked like a porn set. Like his ex-girlfriend would walk in and be like, what are you guys doing?
Did anyone audition on a couch?
Definitely not. But that like it came like we got comments. People were like, what are you guys doing? And so after 5 episodes of a lot of friction, because we had to like then not only the setup, but we had to get up. The cameras have a timer. So we had to like every 20 minutes we had to get up and hit record again. And we're like, then we have to edit this thing. So we're like, we literally grabbed the equipment, put it in a closet. And when we launched Content is Profit, we're like, remove the friction. Let's do it as frictionless as possible. We go live. So it was streamed live. And then literally we grabbed the audio from the memory card, put it and upload it. And that was it. So we never like really put it on YouTube or other platforms. So that's why audio first started to grow. And then last year we decided to start loading. But with shorts and everything, we're in the thousands, people discovering us. It's been fun. We haven't looked at data in a long time because the focus for us has been the relationships. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's where we're at now. I think we're top 0.2% in the world in business and marketing. So that's pretty awesome.
The world is a really large place for you to be.
Yeah.
For you to achieve that is actually pretty awesome. I agree with you. That's pretty impressive.
And the surprising thing is it's not as hard as people think, especially in audio. There's, I think the stat is 300,000 active podcasts, which active means more than 9 episodes. And published in the last 3 weeks, I think is the main thing. So for people to start podcasting, yeah, it might be hard to grow and get the big numbers that a lot of people are famous for. Joe Rogan, right? Or keep in mind these people are publishing 9 years. He's just your best friend. But at the same time, it's easier to crack that because you can get a few 100 downloads every single week, and you will be still ranking. And as long as you stay consistent, that's number is going to grow, right? Consistency and frequency is the name of the game. And then for other platforms, you can also leverage different things. And then each platform has obviously their nuisance, and we can dive into that later. But yeah.
There's a couple different places I want to go with this interview. For right now, I'm going to stay with the podcast, and then I'm going to ask you some stuff about your history. But the podcast itself is you and your brother, and the format, as you said, is very free flowing. Having been a guest on your show and had a great time, it's a great podcast.
Thank you.
It's fun, it's upbeat. You guys have just a great presence. What would you say to anyone who actually wanted to establish a podcast? What would you recommend? What format do you think would be good for them to actually get traction? Because there's a lot of podcasts out there that royally suck.
Yeah, that's a good question. And the initial answer is it depends. It depends on what type of creator you are, or if you even consider yourself a creator. What will be less friction for you? Because obviously now podcast has evolved, right? It started about 10 years ago, just audio. And it was something where the tech guys were the only ones like knowing how to do the podcast because of the type of technology. And it's actually the only media that you own. You actually own your RSS feed, which is where your podcast goes, and is not regulated. So people can actually say whatever they want. And that's a huge advantage, right? Like let's say you go and you have your podcast on YouTube, right? You don't own that video. Like they decide to shut your channel down. That's it, game over. But it has evolved in a sense of you can actually do the audio, and then you can also leverage video. But for somebody to get started, is number one is identify your resources, right? That means like your time as well. Do you have a team? And then start creating and try to remove as much friction as possible. And by start creating, it sounds easy, right? But it can be very challenging. It's like a lot of people ask, well, what do I say? What's the podcast about? First, we have to identify like, why do we even want a podcast, right? Like we had somebody in the studio. We also own like a physical podcast studio, and we had some people from real estate development coming in, and they want to record like a webinar type of thing. But then they're like, oh, this is great. Like we should start a podcast. And every time somebody says that to us, we're like, that's great. But at the same time, we have to think about like, why do we actually want this podcast? And for them it was very clear. They just wanted to develop their relationships with the real estate agents, the contractors that are coming, and they wanted to inform like their area. Is one of the fastest developers in Florida, actually. So that to me makes sense to keep something like that going on for a long time. But it's identify why do we want to do it, and then remove the friction as in equipment. What do we need to do this? There's some podcasts right now that we've heard and we've listened that can be recorded on their phone. And it's set up like that initial phase one standard where you can achieve consistencies. Okay, my goal is to do one episode a month or 2 episodes a week or whatever that looks like for you, and then stick with that cadence and then start thinking a way on how to level up. For us, for example, was let's start with 45 Live. We're just going to tell a story of what happened to me today, and I'm going to relate that to my business. That's it. And every single day we did that. And then when we launched the show, it was a similar thing. So what did we learn this week? And we'll tell a story of what happened, or like, how do we apply that in our business? And then we're going to connect our business. And that was the format. And the less thinking that we can do to do that initially is going to help you get off the ground. Now, after that, there's different phases. It's okay, now how can I start attracting the audience that I want in my podcast, that I want listening to my show? And then is like, how do I become a little bit different than anything else? So a lot of people start with interview shows because it's easy. We don't have to really think much about what we're going to say, right? We can ask the person on the other side different questions. The issue with that is that a lot of people ask the same questions all the time. It's tell me about your story, or they stay very like top level and we don't dive into a specific topic, which we're guilty of. That's exactly what happened at the beginning of like our show. And then we're like, let's make it a little bit different. Let's like dive into stories instead of, or action items or something very specific that our audience can take as value and as a win. So now we're focusing a little bit more on that. And there's different phases of evolution that we can go into it. But to get started, remove the friction, turn on that camera, and go ahead and say something. Tell a story.
Just make the content. Just make the content. And I'm guilty of it too. For me, I just decided, all right, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And I actually produced some content that got some listeners too and got some compliments on, which is great. I got a lot of negative feedback, which was helpful actually. It is what it is. I agree with you there. You have to make the content. And finding the time to make the content sometimes is a real pain. So that's one of those resources that you mentioned. Now, I'm going to shift gears real quick, and I'm going to go back to your background because you have some wicked tenacity. And so you're from Venezuela, and just can you just tell a little bit of your story? I'll be that guy. Hey, can you tell your story? Tell your story. You got a pretty fascinating story. You went
Thank
through
you.
some wicked stuff back in
Yeah.
Venezuela before you made it to the United States, and then managed to even stay married after taking out a loan and not telling your wife that you were blowing half of it on a mastermind. That's impressive
Yeah.
that you even are able to stay married with that.
Brainski Unleashed is powered by ProfitMax. Did you know that 93% of businesses overpay on their taxes? Do you pay too much in taxes? A recent study showed that businesses are overpaying between 34 and 71%. ProfitMax is proven, legal tax strategy solutions to reduce your tax burden. I'm not only a client, but I even joined the team to help other business owners just like me pay only their fair share and nothing more. Go to profitmax.co. That's profitmax.co. Profitmax.co to find out more. You can even connect with me there, as you should. And I'll help make sure that your tax bill is legally as low as allowed. ProfitMax. Keep your cash.
When people ask me what's your biggest win in life, that's the one. I hit that information for about a year, and then we're like, okay, I think it's time to say. But thank you for those words. Yeah, originally from Venezuela, right? I grew up there. The dream was to be a professional soccer player, so my whole life was like shaped around that. I would go to school, and then I would practice with two teams back to back. When I was 15, I went to Italy. I tried out we did a tournament there. I got scouted. Tried out. The scout was like, hey, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because in Italy, the stat is like only one Italian out of 300,000 players make it to professional soccer. And I was like, I got this. And I was very fortunate. I ended up playing almost pro. And then when I came back, turns out that I was there illegally, and we didn't know. Like, the agent that took us there took us illegally without the paperwork. And I was not allowed to go back to Italy for a few years. And that was heartbreaking, right? Because I was 16. I was like, I felt like I was at the top of my level, and I was about to make a professional debut, which was crazy at that age. And so anyways, finished school in Venezuela, went to Spain at 18 to play in an academy in Barcelona, played there. Similar thing. I ended up playing for, or trying out for, a professional team in Spain. And then I got injured, and then I was like, I'm done. This is not what I want to do. I had a really bad coach at the time that it was not a fit. And I was 19 at the time. I thought I was losing time because all my friends were going to school. And it was one of those moments that defined the rest of my life in a sense. Came back home. My dad didn't speak to me for 6 months because of that. We trained 19 years to get to that point, and he's like, you're right there. And I was like, this is not what I want to do anymore. That's it. And it was just a really hard time. So obviously in Venezuela, there was a very hard political situation at the time. Still is a dictatorship. Yeah. Yep. And I dove into, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I started going to school, and I actually got a job with Red Bull. So I started working with that company, and it was a job that kept me really active. I started selling the drink to different locations. That was my job as a student brand manager, what they call marketing, and learned a ton, but it kept me active and kept my mind outside of soccer in a sense. And then political situation got like really bad, where that I had to make some decisions, and a lot of the people that I knew were looking for opportunities overseas. And I'm like, I have this skill, which is playing soccer, and let's see if we can get a scholarship in the United States. So we decided to cold email 300 coaches of D1, D2, D3 with our video, and 2 answered, which was really exciting. One was West Texas NAM, and then the other one was University of North Florida. And in West Texas, that's the one that we picked at the time because the scholarship was higher. They accepted my bid. They sent me the paperwork. And then 2 weeks before I had to go, this glass door exploded as I was showering, and it caught my foot and it got infected. And then they pulled the scholarship away. So then here I was at 19, 20, and thinking, this is over. I'm not going to be able to go. Waited another year, recovered, started training again, and we're like, let's do this again. And we reached out to University of North Florida, see if they were still interested, and they were. And I got a full ride to play in a D1 soccer school, and the guy that was helping us is a D1 in Florida. You say yes to that. So we're like, absolutely. So that's how I ended up here in the States, and I'm very grateful for the sport, for that opportunity, right? All the things happened in Venezuela where, because of the insecurity, part of the decision was to come here, but we got in the raids. Police chased us. I got kidnapped, unfortunately. And if you speak with a Venezuelan, probably either they have or somebody that they know went through that. And that was the weekend that I was like, this is it. I have to go find new opportunities. And I'm very...
So let me dive into that, because you just said that so nonchalant. Yeah, we got kidnapped. was a rough weekend. Is what the heck does that mean? Could you define that better? Because I don't know of anyone that goes, I got kidnapped this weekend. It changed some things for me. I wasn't sure, but anyway, I went to school. Like that doesn't go together. There's a disconnect. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point, the reason I say that is because I'm extremely grateful for that, just because it allowed me to be here in a place that I love and adore, obviously with my wife and my two kids, and building something that I'm very proud of that otherwise I don't think it would have been possible. But yeah, around 2000, I think this is 2009, 2010, there was a very popular thing happening in Venezuela that's called express kidnapping. So you will be out and about, and some people will pull up next to you and they will just throw you in the car, and they'll call your family and ask for ransom money, and they'll drive you around until they get the money, and then hopefully if you're lucky they will release you. And you hear a lot of stories of people dying, or like they're not able to pay and they kill the person. At the time I was in college over there, working through all the paperwork to come here to the States. And I'm like, if that doesn't happen, I'll have to still go to school here and do something. Nightlife in Venezuela was a challenge because obviously you're a 18, 19-year-old and all you want to do is go out. I was working with Red Bull, so all my work was going out, was go to these clubs and providing with drinks and just be in the scene, to the point that we would go out at 10 p.m. and my dad would be like, just stay till 7, 8 a.m. and then drive back, because like it's safer, right? It's just you don't want to be driving at night. And a lot of my close friends had different encounters, and one got shot as he was driving home, and the bullet went through both windows at his head height. And it was very lucky that it didn't hit him at all. And he was in a plane next week, and he had the possibility to go to Panama first, and then he ended up here in the States. But you hear a lot of those stories, and you never think that's going to happen to you. I was playing in a national club, and our practice was about 30 minutes away from my house and at night. And I had to drive back at 10:30 at night. So that drive was always a little intimidating and crazy. And so you try to go fast. When I go home, I decided, hey, my friend is having a party like inside of our neighborhood. And the neighborhood was just one entrance, one exit. Like it was safe ish. And I remember going to my parents. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go to his house. It's inside of the neighborhood. We should be okay. And my mom that night, she was like, she never does. And she's like, I just have a feeling. Just stay home. And I was like, no, it's okay. He's going to be here in the neighborhood. Like it's going to be safe. And so I go, and around midnight, they just phone the people in the party. Hey, can you come pick us up? And everybody was wasted. There's no drink and driving in Venezuela in a sense. Like they give you a tomato and be like, hey, just eat the tomato and you'll sober up, basically. So very different.
Never tried
obviously.
that. Maybe I should try that.
Very good hangover cure, let me tell you. But anyway, so I wasn't drinking because I was playing. I was trying to get recruited by the state. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'll go, but I won't drive my car. Like somebody else has to come with me, and we do that. A friend gave me her car, and then another friend came with me. And we're driving. This is a newer car. That was also other part of the issue is like newer cars, they'll try to steal them from you. So we get to the neighborhood. It's an open neighborhood. As we're driving down, I'm turning a U-turn. I'm doing a U-turn to find our friends. And the houses back there, they're not. You don't have open lawns like you see here in the States. So it's like a front wall, and especially in that part of the city, like these electric fences. You could tell like they were coming out, but they weren't outside in the street. And as I'm pulling over, this car comes behind us with like high beams. And I'm like, they're going to crash. So I tell my friend, hey, just you close the door and we'll go. And as he was closing the door, I turn around, there's a gun pointing at my face. And I just froze. They came in the car, they threw us in the back, they drove us around. I personally think that they were corrupt cops just by the way that they spoke. And we were very lucky because they took whatever money we had in our wallets and they drove us around what it felt like a whole night. And then they threw us in a random street and they took the car. That's all they wanted. I think when they saw the clothes that maybe we were wearing or we weren't like really targeted, I think the car was the targeted one. We were so lucky. It was like, that was probably the best situation that could have happened to us that night. And we're very lucky that we were like 2 streets away from somebody that we knew. So we just ran there. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. And I came that night and I was like, I'm out of here. I don't know what I need to do, but I will leave this country. I don't think this is the place for me to build something or to chase an opportunity. I don't know what that opportunity is. And I think that's what drove a lot of the push to leave.
Your kidnappers, were they somewhat hospitable? Did they ask you if you wanted a water while you're sitting in the back of the van?
No,
No,
nothing.
so they were not nice. They
They,
just took your money and threw you out basically after driving you
they
around. Were they yelling at you? Were they threatening you while driving around?
no, and that's why I think like they were cops, and then later we knew that that type of kidnapping started happening a lot. So yeah, they just threw us in the back seat. There was four of them, right? Two in the front seat, two in the back next to us. They kept our heads down. We couldn't see their faces. We just saw their guns, and they were like, "Hey, give me everything you got." So I had a watch at the time. Blackberries were a thing, so we just basically gave them the phones. And I remember I never used to carry cash, and I said, "Hey, open your wallet," and I literally had something like $2, and he's, "This is all you have?" And then I remember thinking, he's gonna kill me. This is it. Because you hear those stories like you don't have anything, and then you're like, that's it, it's game over. And the guy threw the wallet back at me and didn't throw it away or nothing. So I'm like, this is very weird with all the stories. And then that, in a weird sense, allowed me to stay a little bit more calm, because maybe these are cops, maybe they're after something else. And sometimes they do that because then they use those cars to go on raids or try to find something else. And that's how bad the situation is. That's how corrupt it is, that they have to go steal cars. To this day, I still think that obviously my angel, my guardian angel, I have a big angel tattooed in my back. And he was there that night. And they said, "Hey, when we drop you off, just don't look back. Don't look at the car. We'll shoot you." So I stayed what it felt like 10 minutes, just like staring at the ground. My friend was hyperventilating in a corner. And
So your fear level, right? If one is afraid of, oh gosh, someone's going to rear end me, and 10 is I'm on the verge of crapping in my pants because I can't control it. What number would you be as far as fear level, as these guys have abducted you, put you in the car, and you know what this is? How scared were you?
That's a good question. I'll say very, but at the same time, it was very weird. I was just picturing different scenarios, and I was like, if this is it, I don't really know how to react to that. I think I was such in a shock and I was thinking like how my parents are not, they don't come from money. Like, we were middle class. I was like, man, if they ask for X amount of dollars or
You're not going to get it.
yeah, it's not going to happen. Yeah. I was just thinking that was like what's coming through my head. And then, like I said, like that, the wallet issue, the wallet thing happened like very early into the drive. So that calmed me down, because we've heard stories before where it's like, there's no money, they literally shoot you there. So I was like, if they were going to shoot us, that was the moment, and it didn't happen. So I think we're okay in a weird way. And everything happened so either so fast or so slow. Like the time, I can't tell you. I think it was a couple hours that we were going through that, but I was just playing scenarios in my head.
Did you have like a moment or even a second of really facing your mortality? Did you have a point where you thought, maybe I need to pray? Maybe I got to pray. My life is going to end, or maybe I'll never see my mother again. Like one of those moments where I wish I could have said something to someone. I'm losing my chance. This is over. Did you have any moments like that?
To be honest, no. And I don't know if it's because that one moment with the wallet that I'm like, if I'm going to be dead, it's going to be now. And then it didn't happen. And I'm like, I think I'm going to be okay. So then at that point, I just kept listening to what they were saying. And for some reason, people say you see your life flash in front of you when you're in these situations, right? None of that happened to me. I was just picturing if they take us to the favela area where normally that's what happens, and they keep us there, like how long are they going to take us there? Are they going to tie us to something? What's going to happen? That's what I kept thinking. These scenarios, I'm like trying to figure out how we were going to get out of that. And then all of a sudden they're opening the door and they throw us in the street, right? No, we're not. Never thought that. I don't know if it was my guardian angel there that was like, hey, you're going to be okay. Or it felt like at peace, weirdly. But I knew like after that, I remember seeing my friend, and my friend was like completely like shocked, like shaking, hyperventilating. And I had to grab him and just like, drag him out. Like, where are we? And finally he came out of shock and we saw where we were. Yeah, I don't know if that's like a normal reaction in general for these type of situations, but it was very surreal for sure.
I'm very glad you're around. That would be
me too.
I don't know who I'd be talking to if you weren't. I probably would not be doing this tonight, obviously. Great to see you. You're welcome. Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up. We've actually talked a little bit longer than I expected. Where can people learn about you, find out about you, work with
Absolutely.
you? Which, by the way, I highly recommend anyone, if you've ever considered doing a podcast, he's your guy. He's the guy that you want to go to. He's gonna smooth out the pavement for you, and that road is going to get much easier. And he will bug you and help you make content and prevent you from being a complete and total screw up. That is a personal testimony. So, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for those kind words. If they listen to podcasts, we're on Content is Profit in every platform. You can also watch us on YouTube. Same thing, Content is Profit. And then if you want to connect with us on social, at Beast Bros Co. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. That's our favorite platforms. We're also on LinkedIn if you're there. So come say hi. It's us behind the DMs. So if we take a second to answer, that's because we might not be looking at the DMs at that point. But I encourage everybody to send us a message. And if you enjoy our show and Thomas' show, just let us know.
Obviously, they should enjoy my show. They're listening to it.
Obviously.
If they've
They're all the
listened
way.
this long,
I mean,
they must like it.
after this story, we better get some hellos.
Absolutely. There needs to be. You deserve it. You lived through something horrible like that. Do you have any final thoughts, any last minute words of wisdom before we sign off?
Words of wisdom. I think daily practice that we do with our team is like we go around and we say what we're grateful for. And that started a while back. And it was very awkward at first for a lot of people going through something like that, or we never know really the past of like the people that we interact with. But I think if you don't do that, like if you want to do a daily what you're grateful for thing with your team or even by yourself, I think is going to bring a lot of light into your life. And then as far as like publishing goes, go ahead, create a piece of content. If you don't want a podcast right off the bat, I would highly recommend try going live in whatever platform is your favorite for a couple minutes and tell a story of something that happened to you that day and then relate it to your business somehow. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised of the feedback. And then if you like that, then you're good to go. You continue to evolve your content, and then you can call us and we can help you with the podcast.
Okay. So I have to ask then, what are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for this conversation. This is my new setup. We actually rearranged the home office since now we have a physical studio. So I'm grateful that I get to do this and end my day with this amazing conversation. I am grateful that we have a soccer game tomorrow. We still play. And I'm grateful that my knees still work.
Amen, brother.
What are you grateful for, Tom?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'm grateful for the fact that I can literally record a podcast from a hotel in Minneapolis. I'm grateful for the fact that I just walked around the Mall of America today, had a really good meal, got myself a new cell phone, one that does not have a button on it, because I'm probably one of the last people on earth to get a new cell phone that doesn't have a button. And listen, I live a fantastic life. I'm grateful every single day because I've been around the world. I continue to see the world. I got a fantastic family, and there's a lot to be grateful for. That every day there's something that I could look at my life and go, man, I'm so blessed. All right. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you all for listening. I am grateful for everyone that listens to my show. I'm even more grateful if you want to see me even more grateful, you will remember to like and share this episode. With that, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you next time.